Hi everyone, and a very pleasant evening to you once again. Tonight we're going to give you a bit of a treat for those of you who live particularly in the provinces of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. There are two hunting seasons that are allowed in the very far western province of BC in the early spring. These are the white snow geese and the black brant. The first of these shows you're going to see tonight on the lesser snow goose. Once again, a very pleasant welcome. My name is Ted Peck, and let's go with Tides and Trails.
Tides and Trails is presented each week at this time by Sportsman Cigarettes. Sportsman, with the tobacco that's too good to filter. Now, here's Ted Peck.
Thank you. And it would be impossible for me, ladies and gentlemen, as an individual to go hunting the snow goose without the very, very capable guiding services and assistance of my friend Jim Murray, who you've met many, many times before on Tides and Trails. I'd just like to welcome him informally once again to the show. Welcome, Jim. And
thanks very much, Ted.
Feel completely at home as you usually do, and have no worries about it. Let's first of all explain to the people who have never seen snow goose hunting on the west coast where the birds came from and why we have a season in the early spring.
Well, Ted, the snow geese come into our part of the country here in the lower Fraser Delta about the 15th of November is when the first big flights come down on their southern migration. And we do get a little chance to get a shoot at them then, but usually they move on down into the southern states, into the mouth of the Skagit Flats and the Columbia River and so on. And then we're usually pretty well prepared for them when we try to catch them on their northern migration. This is when they're going back up into their breeding grounds into places like Siberia. That's quite an interesting point there, that most of the snow geese that we get down here come from Siberia, and there's a tremendous amount of study done on this particular species by the Russian Wildlife Service. Many of the ardent snow goose hunters that we have here have shot birds this year and last year that have been banded by the Russian Wildlife Service.
Well, as I said before, Jim, without you it would have been impossible because of the amount of equipment necessarily alone to hunt them, even so close to a big city like Vancouver. So let's start our film, and then you can explain the history of the geese as you're showing me how to hunt them, okay?
That's fine, Ted. Well, Ted, this is some of the equipment that we use, such as decoys made out of latex or the old type cedar block decoys. And of course, you're pretty well geared up with rather large punts, which are very seaworthy and capable of carrying at least 2 men. And in this particular scene here, we had about 3 or 4 fellows out with us. And this is one of the local launching ramps that we use out here off the Fraser Delta. This ramp was built by some of the local sportsmen.
Well, let's, for the people, for the benefit of those who live in the interior of the country, explain how far out to sea we go and the tides and all that sort of thing that are involved.
Well, here, Ted, the tide is coming in, and we like and prefer to shoot the geese on the dropping tide. Now, the distance that we go out is about approximately a mile from where we put our punts in the water, and quite often we lay from 300 yards to approximately maybe a quarter of a mile offshore in a specific area where these birds will come in when the tide drops to get gravel or pick up feed, which they feed on the roots of the eelgrass. And this is a very small root, and it's very succulent, you might say. It tastes just almost like honey, and they thrive very well on this. This is one of our problems right now, trying to do a survey with the Canadian Wildlife Service, that if our feeding grounds are large enough now to maintain the stocks of snow geese that come into this area. This is one thing that we're quite interested in.
How about the use of outboard motors, Jim?
Well, that was one point I was just going to mention, Ted, that now under the game regulations we are now permitted to go to and from given hunting areas with the use of an outboard motor. And when picking up cripples, we like to use the pole, the long push pole, which is anywhere from 14 to 16 feet long, usually made of cedar or in some cases aluminum. Here you can see some of the boys putting face masks on. We call them anti-glare masks. This you can lay in the punt and look up at the birds when they're coming over, and there's no shine or sheen comes from your face, and the birds will not flare. They're not scared, because if you don't wear a mask, the light will catch your face and reflect just the same as a mirror, you know. And here you have the punt camouflage for the open water. It's usually done by sacking them in, and it blends in the future same trend of blending in like a log laying out in the open water. That's the use of the push pole. Sometimes we get it stuck in the mud. We'll show a little later on just how oozy this mud can get.
Well, I was going to mention that, Jim, that a little later on in the show tonight, we're going to show the other method of hunting snow geese, as well as using your punts on the higher tides. You also walk out on we have a dropping tide into the mud.
This is quite true, Ted.
Young Bobby Gordon, there's a sportsman of known repute for many years.
Yes, and his father before him too, Ted. Other boys there like Richard Nichols from the city of Westminster, and boys like Roy Story, and all pretty well expert punt men now, and they've got their initiation into the art of punt hunting. It's quite a tricky type of hunting, as you can see from the size of the boat. And today we're very fortunate. The weather is fairly calm there, but there are times it's going to get real quite nasty. And if you don't have a seaworthy punt, well, then you can really get into trouble.
I would think a word of caution to the younger sportsmen on going out for the first time, Jim, from you particularly, would be well advisable here if they're coming to the West Coast to do this type of hunting.
Well, this we have done in the past, Ted, and we strongly advise any novice or beginner in hunting either snow geese or the black brant, as the case might be, where you use the punts, that they should join one of their local rod and gun clubs and get to meet fellows that go out and hunt these birds. And these fellows will be very happy to take them out and show them the art of punt hunting and how to handle themselves in a punt, and all the problems that they can become involved in and get an education, or otherwise they can really get into trouble like some of the boys have done in the past. Here we have the setting out of a silhouette. This is usually made out of a plywood or a heavy paper cardboard construction, and we set this on the mud humps just as the tide is dropping to give the impression that there are so many birds on the shore or already feeding. And here are some of the first flocks of geese that we got coming in and setting in towards our decoys.
Do you ever see the lesser snow goose, in this case, fly in the typical V of the Canada goose, or do they always fly erratically, as we saw there in that shot?
In most cases, Ted, they do fly slightly erratically, but they do have a tendency to try and form a V, although they never really quite accomplish it to the same precision. Here is about as close as you'll come to snow geese in a V formation.
Sort of a ragged V.
It is quite, yes. There's always the birds on the outside, and a few stragglers off behind, a few filling in the middle. Here's a small flock. This is about as close to it as you can come.
I still think it's pretty amazing that very close to a center of population such as Vancouver, that within 5 miles there is still public hunting, as we see here. Well, the fact that the population of geese is still maintained is something just a little short of fantastic.
Well, this is really so, Ted, and with the ever encroachment of population and industry, and the area that we hunt now that the snow goose feed on is quite close to one of our large international airports, and how these birds become accustomed to aircraft is really quite amazing.
Has there been any effect on by pollution of the marsh? Any decrease in the goose population to your knowledge yet?
Not that we have noticed recently, Ted, but there are some things coming up in the very near future that we are watching very, very closely. I say we, speaking now as director in the BC Federation of Fish and Game Clubs, and we find that this is part of our responsibility to keep in close contact with it. It's quite difficult to try and smoke a cigarette through these masks, as you can see.
Yeah. No face mask there, and there comes a few of the birds getting reasonably close to range now, and we find the punts going down with the tide, getting down right into the sort of natural blinds or pits made right in the open sea there. You ever found a fishy goose, Jim?
No, Ted, I can quite truthfully say in all the years I've hunted geese, I have never tasted a fishy goose at all. And I have yet to experience eating a tough bird. I've heard some fellows say that the birds are tough, but I have never yet found one.
Give us a few goose calls, Jim, as you see the geese appear once again. I know that you're quite proud of your goose calling, and I know that the chaps in the studio here are going to have trouble with the audio, but just giving them an advance warning. Now, give us a few honks.
You're quite often out of your element sitting in a studio, but when you're out there in the old punt and their goose calls kind of covered in mud, you know, and you're spitting mud through, sometimes you can really get quite an effect on it. And there's a shot here with the boys. I think with this day we had a little trouble with some of the birds. We were missing a few of them, you know.
We don't hit them all, that's for sure.
Sometimes we get a little over anxious, I think. There's Richard Nichols. I think he sleeps more than he does anything else when he's out goose hunting.
What size of shot do you recommend, Jim?
Oh, we use number 4 and number 2, Ted, on heavy shot. Some of the boys now use the big 3-inch Magnum shot.
No, we didn't get one that time either. I wonder if you do. No. Let's give us some examples of your goose calling here, Now that brings it in. That brings him in.
And
there
here's the
comes
bird
one
coming down.
Are you imitating a particular feeding call or a particular type of call with that sort of high-pitched honk of the snow goose?
Well, usually the feeding call of the snow goose, Ted, is much similar to this. It's kind of a grumbling growl that goes like this. Then you've got the high call of the gander calling the flock.
I've noticed, Jim, that in all snow geese, whether they come from the coastal flats, as we see here, or the ones found in Alberta, all have a sort of a rusty color on the side of their cheeks. Where does this come from?
This, as I understand it, Ted, comes from the area in which these birds feed on. It's sort of a mineral that they deposit, that they pick up on the side of their face. I understand many fellows have thought that this is sort of a part of their feather coloring, but it's really not. It's caused from the type of feed that they get, digging in the mud and so on.
Good time to have a sportsman after successfully bagging at least one lesser snow goose. We're really conservationists on this trip. We certainly didn't hurt the goose population any.
Well, that's one thing I think we can say, and with the season that we have here, Ted, you've really got to be a diehard to try and get out to get these snow geese, because the fellows that we have out here that are hunting them, we don't actually scratch this flock at all.
Like how many birds winter or spend some time off the mouth of the Fraser River, would you say, in a large year?
Well, on this particular day that we're out, we made a rough count of about 10,000 birds that came over us, anywhere from 40 yards in the air up to about 300 yards in the air.
Most of them 300. I think the trouble was we had too many people involved in the hunt in this one particular trip.
Well, this makes it very difficult to try and conceal all these people and 2 or 3 boats at the same time. And the geese are very wary, and the old gander's pretty smart in spotting any slight movement in a boat. But I was going to say, Ted, our total goose population here is well over 10, 15, up to 20,000 birds, and some people claim we have a few more. I think that this year we had an excellent return of snow geese down from the south, or up from the south. One thing that we noticed this year, we didn't have too many immature birds, young birds. The young birds are sort of a gray in color in relation to the adult bird, which is pure white with a black wingtip. We noticed also that there was a difference in the size of the snow geese. There were some birds ranged from 6 to 7 pounds, 8 pounds, and quite a few were down in the 3.5, 4.5 pound class.
If people are considering coming to the coast in January or February when the hunting takes place, would you like to give them a rundown on the BC Fish and Game Branch limit and possession limit of them then?
Well, the limit on snow geese, Ted, is 5 per day and 25 per season.
Which is pretty generous.
Well, we think it's very generous. And even with that limit, there's very few fellas do manage to fill out their season value on geese.
A lot of hard work, good exercise, and a lot of fellowship and sportsmanship goes on in the hunting of the snow goose. A lot of cooperation between the hunters and various outfits.
Well, this is quite true, Ted, that I think there's a real bond of friendship between the respective snow goose hunters. You get to know each feller by his set and by the way he calls, and when birds are passing close to another set, the other fellow will stop calling and give the other man his full chance, and if the birds bypass him, then you can go to work on them, you know.
Well, such as this channel here was dug collectively by most of the sportsmen that use the area.
This is true. This was dug quite a few years ago by some of our old prominent hunters that took the time out to dig this all out with the old spade and shovel, and they put a wire mesh down in the bottom of it, and they built the rollers to go down. And I think fellas like this would be highly commended for doing this. It's a real teamwork. And then, of course, when you get into it, you have to get through a little bit of oozy mud again to get your boats up on the rollers and up into your vehicle to take home, or in some cases you can leave your boats right out there in one of the, Mrs. Tate has a farm there that she allows the boys to leave their boats in there for a small fee for the year.
Well, we're going to show everybody the oozy mud in the land hunting of snow geese coming up very, very shortly.
Most of our boats, Ted, are well over 15 feet in length, and there are different types and designs of boats.
This gives you some idea, ladies and gentlemen, of the type of equipment and the amount of equipment. And some of these fellows worked for many months building these decoys, handmade. And it pays off in most circumstances. But on this particular trip, as some of you may have seen in BC before, there were just too many hunters, and it was too fine a day to decoy a lot more of the birds in. Piling up some of the gear, mountains of gear to go snow goose hunting.
This all represents many, many days and nights of long, hard labor making up decoys, whether they're made as out of the cedar block or out of the latex rubber type and the blow-up type. Then.
Well, that's why I thank you, Jim, and I said so at the beginning, that nobody can just go out there on their own. You've got to go with somebody who has shot before and has the equipment to go snow goose hunting. If you'd like to build it, it's a lot of hard work, and people like Jim Murray will be very happy to help you. But the best way to learn about it is to join your own sportsman's organization and learn the type of hunting in your own area. You recommend a particularly larger gun or a longer barrel gun, Jim?
No, I don't really, Ted. The fellows that I hunt with, we get our greatest enjoyment out of calling the birds and bringing them right into our decoys within 30 yards of our decoys. This is
in other words, a standard 12 bore with the number 2 Magnum shot or something like that.
This is true, yes.
Well, Jim, thanks again. I'll be back to you in just a few seconds with the land.
Not too essential, Ted. It's the tides that control, I think, the best hunting for snow geese. And the snow geese like to come in on the dropping tide. And when the tide is dropping out, then they come in onto the points of land to pick up their gravel and to feed on the marsh.
Well, let's show them. Let's go into film now, and we'll just show you the methods used in land hunting. This is in the same general area off the foreshore of Lulu Island, and you take it away from here, Jim.
Well, Ted, here we're just looking over the situation and the first thing in the morning trying to pick the right location, and of course we were very fortunate this day that we had a favorable wind, and our most favorable wind out here is a westerly wind with a dropping tide, and we hit the birds from the south starting to move up now to the north and coming into our Fraser Delta to feed.
This usually takes place towards the last few days in February, does it not, Jim?
This is true, Ted, and these birds will continue to come on. The season closed, of course, on the 28th day of February. These birds will continue to come up from the south right up into the middle of March.
It looks like the boys here are all having a sportsman before getting involved in hunting. You've been lucky enough early in the morning to bag one. I see you're just returning it.
We pulled a little bit of a sneak on that one, first of all, Ted. But we teamed up with a couple other boys from Westminster, one boy by the name of Freddie Nichols, who had a nice set of silhouettes here that we were working with, and his partner,
Henry Prindick.
Henry Prindick, I beg your pardon.
Locally known as Big Hank.
Yeah, I know him as Hank. And these boys are real old-time snow goose hunters, and they love the marsh hunting. Why they love that marsh hunting, I'll never know with all that mud and goo that's out there, but As you'll see, we get really involved in it here. You'll notice that we wear, again, we wear the anti-glare mask, and something with myself, I wear like a balaclava, which I can pull down, and some of the other boys wear the full mask.
I see you carry a portable blind there for putting right out into the reeds in the marsh.
This is true, Ted. It's just usually made of sacking that we've taken the shine off of and got it mudded down a little bit, you know. And a cup of coffee always comes in pretty handy in the morning, too, because it gets pretty chilly out there.
Although sometimes, even towards the end of February, the weather has been as mild as 45 to 50 degrees. Other days it's snowy and cold, and down below freezing, but on a general average on the coast of BC, the end of February, you're above freezing during the main part of the day. Here's the real sticky goo for going out to set more decoys. Do you recommend any particular type of boots for this sort of thing? Yeah.
Oh, yes, we prefer either the chest waders or the regular hip boot, Ted. And one thing about a person wearing a chest waders should be very careful in where he's walking in a marsh, not to step in any hole or any mud that he could become embedded in or stuck in, and this could cause him a real problem.
I wouldn't recommend anybody doing this alone. Go with a partner, even though you're probably going to have more success alone. But I suggest, particularly your first 2 or 3 years at it, that you always go with a partner and a more experienced one. And here goes Uncle Stumbly putting on his face mask that you can just barely see through. But when you look up at the sky, the geese don't have that white glare to look down on and shy away from.
You can taste that mud in the old goose call here, Ted. Everybody watches this guy. And there's some of the birds lifting now and moving our way. And this is where calling really counts, because if you make a wrong call or a wrong note, then you're in trouble and the birds will flare off. And you've lost a good chance.
So many of them come just so close, just out of range, about 80, 85 yards.
This is true.
Have a shot at one here, and you can we just hurried that one up a little bit. You see a little puff of feathers there to the left of your screen when the shot started.
Here is, of course, you're making use of the natural camouflage that you have, like an old root or stump. And we always try not to pick too large a stump. This is one thing that fellows should be aware of, too.
How about digging pits, actual pits, and sinking barrels in this type of mud, Jim? I notice there's not too many of them sunk in around there.
No, there isn't, Ted. We don't have too much of that here because we have the effects of the tides and the continual building up of the marsh and the mud and so on.
See, there was one lucky hunter bagged one. Plenty of geese came over us that day, but most of them just out of range. I think there was something like 5,000 geese over our heads during the one day. There is a nice clean shot, Jim. I think this was your bird.
Yeah, I believe it was, Ted.
Do you recommend a dog in certain cases here, Jim, for cripples, or do you find that they spook the geese?
No, I found that a good Labrador dog works very well out there, and he blends in very well with the surrounding camouflage that we have, and he will save you quite a bit of walking, and if you have a good, well-trained dog that sits beside you, then I think it adds to your hunting.
I see you picked up my bird for me, too, being a bit lazy. Well, that's land hunting for the lesser snow goose, and again, people of coastal British Columbia are very privileged to have the opportunity for this in the early spring. And I know we haven't got much time left on the air, Jim, so I'd like to thank you personally, Jim Murray, once again for being on Tides and Trails and for providing both of these excellent goose hunts. I know we worked pretty hard for it at the time, and we certainly appreciate the privilege of showing these films on the air, which Bill Dennis took.
It was indeed a pleasure, Ted, and we'll look forward to next year.
Well, I'll be back every year, slogging through the mud.
Well, it kind of gets in your blood after a while, you know. You're always pretty tired at the end of the day. Sometimes the feet you're just not too sure if you're going to be able to pick them up or not.
Thanks again for being here, Jim.
Thanks, Ted.
And ladies and gentlemen, remember the Sportsman Crestliner 12, the boat All you have to do is say where Tides and Trails have been outside of Canada, put your name and address on the back of a Sportsman cigarette package and send it to the station you're now viewing. And best of luck to you. Be a true sportsman, smoke Sportsman cigarettes, and Ted Peck once again wishing you all the best, and tight lines, straight shooting.
Sportsman Cigarette, with the tobacco that's too good to filter, has brought you Tides and Trails. Join Ted Peck next week at the same time. Tides and Trails was produced for Sportsman Cigarettes by CHAN-TV, Vancouver.